we have the Cessationist versus Charismatics.
Yeah. I lean more cessationist. Like ceased. It's
Cessationist.
ceased.
Like a Cessna. You ever said it like a Cessna airplane?
A cesspool.
Cessationist.
Or yes,
Right
that's-
there was cessationist.
Cessationist.
Yes,
you
there
go.
you go. So somebody play the claps.
I believe in miracles, healing, etc. I wouldn't be surprised if I pray for someone and they're healed in real time. I just don't think it's a gift that is given to individual. I would
agree with
I
that.
agree. Yeah,
I would
You guys
agree
are all
with that.
cessationists, bro.
So,
I'm
but here's
confused.
here's the thing. I think when I think of that term, I don't think of that position.
Yeah.
I generally think of people that I've talked to who are hardcore on that end, who say no, dead stop. It doesn't happen at all.
No.
There are people who profess that, and that's what I always think of when I think of that word.
just gonna say that I think in many times people make straw men of both positions. You know, we see it all online right now, where you got the hyper charismatics that are talking about, oh, this conference. Why would we go to a conference to talk about what Jesus isn't doing anymore? And like that's not the position that they hold. And then you have people on the cessationist side who label everything that is wonky charismatic. That's what I think is the biggest challenge right now, is strawmanning people's positions, and then these words no longer mean what they used to mean. So we're kind of in this in this mess in which people are talking past each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think people tend to agree with cessationists much more than they realize, kind of like what I think happened with you guys tonight. I think that for my entire life I was in Assemblies of God or Pentecostal churches or what have you. Even to the point where I was praying for demons to leave people, and people were falling down when I had my hand on their head and all that crazy stuff. I was like in the Pentecostal trenches, bro. And then I went to Bible school and I learned the Bible, what I believe the Bible says, and I became a cessationist. But it's not. I remember when I was in the charismatic, hyper charismatic world, I was like, wow, those cessationists probably aren't even Christians. They don't believe that God has any power, and they're putting God in a box, right? These are all like the buzz phrases. But really, it's just, like I was saying before, it's just a belief that some of these offices that are laid out in the book of Acts have ceased. Specifically, the miraculous offices that were used to authenticate the gospel during the time of Jesus and the disciples. Things like, and you see that when you look back throughout church history and even into the Bible, you see the office starting to phase out a bit as you get further and further into Paul's epistles. So 1 Corinthians was his very first epistle. 1 Corinthians was out before the book of Acts. And you see these spiritual gifts everywhere. But then as you get further and further in, and later on in history, into like 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus and things of that nature, you don't see anything. You think of that. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but you think about those pastoral epistles to 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus. He's telling the pastors how the church should be run, and there is zero mention about these offices about having healers in the church and things of that nature. In fact, he says that when people are sick in your church, send them forward to the elders so that the elders can pray for them and anoint them with oil. But if, in 90 AD, when it was written, if there was still all these healers everywhere, he'd say, if somebody in your church is sick, send them to your local healer in the church and they shall be healed. And so even within the New Testament, you see it start to phase out. And then by the time you get to the 1st century church, Polycarp, Origen, these folks, they say that the spiritual gifts have ceased. And we're talking like 100 to 120 AD. When I say spiritual gifts, I mean those
specific offices. I don't believe that there's no spiritual gifts. I don't believe that there's no miracles, as like 95% of cessationists don't believe that. I would say it's the very fringe group that would say God does zero today and there's no spiritual gifts. And I would say that that's not based on the Bible at all.